Today we're going to talk about something that I think everybody enjoys listening to or at least discussing, and it's pro wrestling conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories and pro wrestling go together like chocolate and peanut butter. They've always been around, they're always going to be around, and there's always going to be some type of theory as to why things happened the way that they did. This can involve real life incidents, backstage incidents. It can involve disagreements between the wrestlers. It can involve the way that certain angles portrayed out on TV, or it can involve something much deeper and darker than anybody would have imagined. Now, you've seen all the iceberg videos and the pro wrestling conspiracy videos, and today I've got about 5 that I'd like to discuss with you, and I feel like they are all very interesting topics to talk about. So, without any further ado, let's open the forbidden door and talk about some of the wildest pro wrestling conspiracy theories that I've heard about. The first conspiracy on our list centers around Hulk Hogan and WrestleMania 9. Now, as you know, many people are not a fan of the way that WrestleMania 9 ended, considering that Hulk Hogan came in, inserted himself into a match following the main event, and toppled Yokozuna to become the WWF champion. However, there's much more to that night, and much more to the story about how Hulk Hogan got that signature black eye. We've seen WWE Ultimate Edition figures come out with that rendition of Hulk Hogan, and people believe there's much more to the story, and it centers around the Macho Man Randy Savage, his former tag team partner in the team known as the Mega Powers, and his ex-wife in Elizabeth having a potential affair with the Hulkster. Hogan went on to say that the black eye came from a jet ski accident that happened just a few days prior to Mania. However, many people believe that it was the Macho Man Randy Savage who got into a verbal altercation which turned physical and dropped Hulk Hogan, causing him to have that black eye. Now, we don't have any answers as to if this is true or not, but this is the first conspiracy on our list because based off the type of person Hulk Hogan was, I could definitely see this one being true, brother. Now, this next one is probably the pure definition of a conspiracy theory, but if you really think about it, it could get interesting. Imagine that the McMahon family, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, Shane McMahon, Linda McMahon, imagine that that's not really the true McMahon family, because this next conspiracy centers around the fact that the McMahon family you've seen all throughout the WWF and the WWE were paid actors and are paid actors to keep the real McMahon family hidden away from the cameras. Now, this is way out there. This is crazy, but that's what these videos are about. Imagine that this isn't really the McMahon family. Imagine that these are just dedicated, serious actors who are playing a part in a much bigger story than what has already been told. I mean, we already know what's happened with Vince McMahon, and I'm sure you've heard about it. We've all heard about it. We're not going to get deep into the allegations centered around Vince and Kennedy McMahon, but just thinking that these are not actually the McMahons, these are not the McMahons that we've come to know throughout the years of watching professional wrestling in the WWE, it would be the perfect story for a professional wrestling company, for a soap opera where you beat each other's asses. This would be perfect because the entire time they would have the blanket and the covers pulled over our eyes without us having a clue. Now, is it true? Probably not. But it really does make you think, what if these aren't the McMahons? What if we just think these are the McMahons? Much can be said about CM Punk's departure from All Elite Wrestling. The return of CM Punk was talked about for weeks on end, and many fans were excited to see what he could do in a different company. However, we're not going to talk about Punk working in AEW. We're going to talk about the infamous backstage brawl he had with Jungle Boy Jack Perry, which caused him to leave AEW forever and slowly but surely make his return to the place he said he would never come back to in the WWE under the tutelage of a man he used to hate in Hunter Hearst Helmsley, or Triple H. But now that the bridges were rebuilt and the grudges were buried, there's a little bit of a conspiracy about Punk and Jungle Boy being in on the act all along. What if it was a backstage ruse between the two where Jungle Boy was just helping CM Punk get out of his AEW contract because of various issues, including issues he had with the owner and president of AEW in Tony Khan? I think that this has a lot of legs to it, and I think that Punk could have talked to Jungle Boy, and we're probably never going to get this answer. We're probably always going to be told that this wasn't the case, but I find it very interesting that Punk had visited Monday Night Raw. I believe it was a Monday Night Raw that was in Chicago, Illinois, to talk to some of his old coworkers and friends, and I believe he talked to Triple H, and then, right after that, that's when he makes that departure from AEW after this incident at AEW All Out in London. I mean, he had that match with Samoa Joe, and then the backstage brawl took place, but what if Jungle Boy was just helping CM Punk execute the next step in his calculated departure? I believe this could definitely be the case, and we're never going to get a real answer. We're never going to get an answer from Jack Perry. We're never going to get an answer from CM Punk, but the only people who know if it was a calculated risk or not are the two men who were involved. Now, this next theory kind of brings the word conspiracy to life with the theory that there was actually a second Ultimate Warrior who portrayed the character when he returned after a hiatus in 1992. Now, in the late 80s into the early 90s, we knew the Ultimate Warrior as being just that, the ultimate male, the ultimate man. And I'm not talking about Thunderlips from Rocky III, but he had the quintessential action figure build. Huge chest, huge bicep, huge delts, just huge thighs. Every part of his body was basically built like an action figure. But when he returned from hiatus in 1992, the gear was different, along with the fact that he looked like he had slimmed down by a significant margin. He was much, much smaller, still in shape, still a phenomenal physique, but it just didn't look like the Ultimate Warrior that we came to know and love. And aside from that, like we said, the different gear, a lot of people believe that the original Ultimate Warrior actually died prior to him returning in 1992, and they used the Texas Tornado, a former tag partner of the Ultimate Warrior, in Kerry Von Erich to portray the Warrior's character while sweeping his potential death under the rug. Now, did the Ultimate Warrior meet his demise? Everybody goes on to say that this is false. Everybody goes on to say that this is just another fan conspiracy that makes absolutely no sense. But with everything in wrestling being a storyline, do we really know what the truth is? Was the real Ultimate Warrior actually unalived, or did the real Ultimate Warrior pass away prior to the return and fans were onto something by saying it was somebody new? We'll never know. This is kind of more of that paranormal theory than anything else, but it does raise some questions considering how much smaller the Warrior looked when he returned in 1992. And for our final theory on this list, it comes at the hands of the man who had the most precious undefeated streak in the history of modern-day pro wrestling, in The Undertaker's undefeated streak, and the fact that it was broken by the Beast Incarnate Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30. And WrestleMania 30 is special for a lot of reasons, considering the fact that it was when Daniel Bryan finally was able to reach the top of the mountain and the Yes movement was able to finally commence. And it was also due to the fact that this was when the undefeated streak was broken. 21-1, The Undertaker finally tasting defeat at WrestleMania. However, was that really the plan all along, or did the Beast go into business for himself alongside Paul Heyman? The theory goes on to state that Undertaker was actually supposed to win the match and be the man to carry on the undefeated streak by beating Brock Lesnar. However, he was hurt and concussed during the match multiple times by Lesnar after taking a plethora of F5s, and many people believe that The Undertaker was knocked out prior to the finish, and that's what led Brock Lesnar to hoist Undertaker up on his shoulders and hit a final F5 and go into the cover for the 1-2-3. Now, Heyman has always been a great mouthpiece, he's always been a great manager, and he's always had great facial expressions. However, the reaction on his face when The Undertaker's streak was broken looked like a man that was truly surprised, and maybe it wasn't supposed to go down like that. Maybe Lesnar was supposed to taste defeat, but he knew that The Undertaker was compromised, and like a wild predator attacking an injured gazelle, the Beast took advantage and was able to have success and break the precious unbeaten streak of The Undertaker. Now, it took a while for him to regain consciousness. He played it off very well. The fans were in shock. Paul Heyman was in shock. Everybody was silent because the streak was finally broken, and nobody believed that that streak would ever be broken until The Undertaker retired. So it begs the question, did the Beast Incarnate turn it from a pro wrestling match into a shoot fight and take advantage of a man who didn't have his wits about him? And nobody will ever know. The only people who would ever know what the truth is are Mark Calloway or The Undertaker and the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar. But that conducts our list for the wildest wrestling conspiracy theories for our video today. If you have any other conspiracies you'd like me to talk about, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions for future videos, future topics, future top 10 lists, let me know those in the comment section as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with your favorite finishing move from any of the wrestlers we talked about today. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.